Hello and welcome to Two Mutables in a Pod. This is a podcast exploring all things taboo through the lens of spirituality, astrology and bloody life experience. For all of you who are well versed in astrology, this is all the good stuff in the 8th house. My name is Bibi.
My name is Emily.
And we are your hosts. Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Two Mutables in a Pod. This episode is called The Guessing Game. So in this episode, we will be looking at a famous person's chart. And I just wanted to kind of explain how we even got here to the guessing game. So if you've been listening for the first couple of episodes, you'll know that Emily and I both met on Instagram, and we used to send each other videos and like posts of celebrities, and we would just say, what do you think this person's sign is? Or what do you think about this person's chart? And during our conversations in the DMs, we would just go back and forth playing a guessing game about the celebrity or famous person's chart, and then we would then go on Google and find out their actual birth chart and then do a cross comparison. We would just bring that to the podcast as a little fun, getting to know astrology in real life application to a famous person.
So in today's episode, we will be talking about Zahara, also known as Bulelwa Mutikana, who was a world-renowned singer and songwriter and guitarist from Southern Africa, who sadly passed away on the 11th of December in 2023, shortly after she celebrated her 36th birthday. With humble roots and beginnings, the Xhosa singer from the Eastern Cape entered mainstream charts in 2011 with her debut album and single Loliwe, which won the hearts of South African listeners but also the world beyond. Zahara received various international and national awards for her musical masterpiece and quickly rose to fame, but her rise to fame did not come without pain or betrayal. Now, you must be wondering, why Zahara? Well, when tributes came flooding in across Instagram on the 11th of December 2023, from the Southern African medium personalities that I followed, I was curious to know more about Zahara, who she was, and what had happened at the time, but prior to her passing. Eventually, I stumbled across her Instagram account, and as you know me, I love a good whole rabbit hole search. So, I remember thinking to myself how deep her eyes were, how I could feel that pain through the pictures, the heaviness. The eyes told a lot, essentially. And I was taken aback by how spiritual, that I felt from herself as a person. Not that I knew her personally, but just from the things she shared on her social media platforms and the energy that I felt internally. And I really couldn't shrug off that deep connection to the water that was coming across so heavily, which led me into further research, as some would say, wanting to know more about her life and what caused her premature death. And it is this feeling that left me with the need and the desire to want to amplify her story in the diaspora. And I recall briefly, in the Instagram DMs with Mimi, sharing Zahara's profile, giving her a bit of a background about who Zahara was and why this person really stood out for me. And for these reasons listed above today, in today's episode called The Guessing Game, we will be discussing what we intuitively feel about Zahara's birth chart, the energies based on her story and public persona, and then look at her birth chart to compare and contrast the truth and our guessing game.
Beautiful introduction and tribute for Zahara. I think let's dive into her chart. So just before we get into it, when you first sent me her posts and the tributes on Instagram, I didn't really know who she was, and I kind of felt a little bit guilty having to get to know her and her story after her passing, which is a shame, but also shows the legacy that she has built and the name that she has built, that people are still talking about her after her passing. But something that really struck me, if we're kind of getting straight into the chart, was her physical appearance was one of the first things that really caught my attention.
Yeah.
But namely her hair.
Yes.
her hair,
Yes.
I think she has a mole. I can't
Mm,
remember on which side she has a mole
she definitely
above her
does.
lip, and then her teeth. So there was something about the kind of structure of her hair, her facial features that really stood out to me.
Hmm.
And if we're looking at like kind of our physical appearance, like when we're looking at astrology, that's where we would go into the rising sign.
Yeah.
Obvious thing with the hair is to
Yes.
say Leo
Leo, right?
rising,
Hmm.
the Leo being the lioness, the mane. But I actually
Hmm.
don't think that is her. I don't think that's I don't think that's her physical persona. There are parts of her
Okay.
energy that are Leo-esque in
Yes.
terms of
Hmm.
that solar energy, being very confident, being
Hmm.
involved in the arts, but I don't
Hmm.
think her physical appearance is
Speaks to
Leo.
that.
Yeah.
To be honest, like just hearing you speak, particularly about the hair, when you mentioned the hair, like I remember her brows, they're very full. Her hair's
Mm.
quite thick, quite curly, but volume, like a
Yes.
mane. However, like, do you know what? As you were speaking, I was thinking of Aries rising, but yeah, okay, so the reason why I say this is because also I see how like Martian she can be, although there is a a softness within. When
Yeah.
she defends women's rights, like when she talks about women, she's very passionate. Like, she, even wanted to go to the extent of learning how to shoot so that she could defend herself. And I
Mm.
do think those are like quite
Mm.
Martian traits.
Mhm.
Wanting to go to war in order to protect oneself. But then on the flip side, like when I think about the physical appearance, right, there is also this aspect of being a Sag rising, which I can see. I think when we
Mm.
speak about her physical physique, like the curvishness, like the curviness, should I say, I do think Sag represents curves, the hips, being well formed, the Coca-Cola body bottle, if
Mhm.
you might
Mhm.
say. But then I also
Mhm.
think that this could also talk about and also relate to the fact that she is a smiler. I think she's very smiley. When you see her pictures, when you watch her in interviews, quite playful, quite, I want to say, Jupiterian. But I think this also ties into the topic of her faith, which we're going to look at next. And that's why I'm torn
Yeah.
between, I do think there is some fire. There is fire energy on the rising for sure. I'm just torn between the Aries and the Sag. Yeah.
Agree with both because
Yes.
it really strikes me that she's got this real fighting spirit about her.
Yes.
And I
Hmm.
think that's very Aries. But why I
Yes.
also think Aries is because there's a lot of things that it had to initiate, had to self-start for herself. Like she
Oh my
taught herself how
gosh.
to play the guitar, I think when she was really
Hmm.
young.
Yes.
She would write her own music as far as I'm aware.
Hmm.
I believe like she was within the church and I don't know if she did like leadership, like, so there's a lot of things that she's done where she's had to be in a position of leadership or autonomy. And even though that's not the
Mm.
physical appearance as such, I do
Yes.
feel like that can come from our rising, that
Yes.
higher kind of part of us, the parts that people initially see from us. So
Yes.
I
Hmm.
kind of think Aries, but then when you were saying Jupiter,
Hmm.
which is the Sagittarius or
Yes.
Pisces, some might say,
Hmm.
I agree with the physique of a
Yes.
Sagittarian. Like
Hmm.
she has got that. I always think of Meg the Stallion when I think of Sagittarius
Oh my God.
women.
Okay. Yes.
Mm, because like Meg's got like this, like she's tall, but she's built and she's got these
Hmm.
beautiful thighs and beautiful
Yes.
like curvaceous body. And that the stallion, I think she's got that
Oh
stallion-esque
my
physique.
gosh. Yes.
So I
Okay.
think that
Okay.
she's the perfect example archetype of a Sagittarius woman, I think. So I do agree, but I think I'm leaning more towards an Aries rising.
Yeah. Okay. To be honest, I do see that, and that like the Martian energy is quite strong. Although I'm torn between Sag and Aries. I'm going to go with Sag. I do see the reasoning behind Aries. Physique though, yeah. I'm going to say Sag rising.
Within the kind of media space, something that has been shared is about her relationship to alcohol. Now, yes. I think I watched within one of the interviews that she kind of was asked this question about, you know, her drinking and her being drunk outdoors at, you know, at events and stuff. And I remember her saying that basically what she does, she doesn't drink outside. No one's ever papped her drinking outdoors. And what she does behind closed doors is what she does behind closed doors. Something that's been publicized is about her relationship to alcohol and the use of alcohol. And I think it's worth kind of speaking on that as something that might or could be seen in someone's chart.
Okay, yes.
Which, I don't know if this is going to be an unpopular thing to say.
Say it.
This is also for me where I do see Jupiter energy. And my rationale for this is we have the light, the dark, the positive and the not so positive within signs. And I think when you put Jupiter under stress, even in under normal circumstances, Jupiter is a planet that expands what it touches. And I think sometimes that expansion can come from stress, and sometimes expansion can mean excessive behaviors. So what might start as like, I'm just having a drink because I like a drink, or I'm just having a drink to calm down, can lead into, I don't know when to stop. And that's the excessive side, I think, to Jupiter. Like, it was screaming Jupiter. So this kind of borders on another topic, but her moon sign, it's linked to her moon, but I do feel she's watery.
Yes.
In moon. So
I was actually going to say, I think I love how you brought in Jupiter, and I think that is something that's not spoken about as much when people look at Jupiterian qualities and traits, is that excess rules positives and negatives. And it can be that someone's living in the negative side of Jupiter's excess. But I see Neptune a lot here. I think I want to say, okay, like you said, unpopular opinion, perhaps the blind spot for her is that the fact that she thinks that she's not doing this, or didn't believe that she was doing this in the public space, kind of excusing the fact that she doesn't, like, or blurring the image around her relationship to alcohol. I think there's some sort of like fog, should I say? Not seeing oneself quite clearly when it comes to addiction or substance abuse or misuse. And that's why I do think the moon for me, I think it's going to be ruled by something that is Neptunian. And I did want to say a Pisces moon. However, you know, I do see when you reference Jupiter, and like I was also thinking about the planet of Neptune as well. Like, is Neptune in a water sign for her? It's hard. I would like to say yes, but I think Neptune in this case could be Jupiter ruled, and Neptune perhaps could be in Sagittarius, as you mentioned, or like have Sag, But I think the moon here, I'm looking at these two planets, but when we think about the media, although you've spoken about the media and portrayal in the media, maybe, just maybe, hear me out, maybe that society and the media also distorts the representation of who Zahara was or is. That's why, I don't know if that makes sense, but essentially what I'm saying is perhaps, you know, there is a double-edged sword here going on, that, you know, although they love the music, they love her, but like society's quick to pinpoint the fact that she might have, you know, allegedly had alcohol misuse problems or had addiction issues. Either way. But like, I'm going to pinpoint my 3 planets. I want to say Pisces moon here.
Yeah.
I want to say, I feel the water energy with the moon. And I think the moon speaks to how we know, like we spoke about this in episode 2. There are things that you will do naturally to support yourself in states of distress, in states of wanting to comfort yourself. And I think that moon speaks to that. Neptune for me is giving Jupiter. But then I think also the self-righteousness, like how you're saying, in interviews, perhaps there was this like blasé approach to actually drinking, but then, facts, reality, and like, the paps are seeing things for what they are. But that's, again, allegedly.
Saying Jupiter, and then I said the moon. It's that traditional and modern rulership. So I do think Pisces as well, in terms of her moon, because for some people, Jupiter still, was ruled by... Pisces was ruled by Jupiter, but it's also got the co-ruler of Neptune. So I do 100% agree with you with the Pisces moon, but I feel it more from the excessiveness and the expansive nature that leads to the excessiveness. But I do think why I would further co-sign a Pisces moon is whenever I've seen her in interviews, there's like an uncontrollable ability where she can't stop crying. And she's very I found her to be very tearful. And I'm a Pisces sun. So like, I can get it, but it's not as intense when you have that Pisces in your moon sign, you are at the belly of the water. You're at the depths of the ocean. And I felt that energy with her when she was just like very, very tearful. I do think as well, I think we'll go on to this, but parts of her faith as well and her relationship with faith kind of gave me Pisces energy as well. So I'm gonna agree with you that Pisces moon.
Onto the part that really took me by surprise, which is Zahara's devotion to God, her upbringing, and also the betrayal that she's experienced throughout her life. She quite often refers to herself as a rural girl. She grew up in the countryside, wasn't accustomed to really the big city life. When I was watching media interviews, when I was watching her TV show, I was taken by surprise how, there's a clear distinction. She identifies that she is a child of God. She has a gift, but she does not believe in traditional African religions, does not practice African religions. And it's quite distinct that she calls her, she's not a traditional healer, she's not a sangoma, but she is somebody who has a connection to God and has gifts. She speaks about being able to pick up on people's energies. And I thought, to me, that really, first and foremost, psychic ability and things that rule the realms that we cannot physically see with our eyes, I think speaks to Pisces energy. And this is why, how you said you co-sign, that devotion to God, the upbringing, because family is really important to her. As you think, this is also down to the moon. But I also want to say how we articulate ourselves, is quite directly intertwined to how we process information, right? How we vocalize that information. And I think whenever there is a discussion about things relating to God and her upbringing, her family, it's very deep, very personal. Like you said, in the belly, deep within the oceans, the depths of the oceans. And I think that's why for me, I don't know whether Mercury would be in Scorpio. Because also, when she speaks, though, it's quite profound. The words that she speaks stay with you. I'm not trying to say that, you go through transformations and, you have the whole Plutonic experience, but you're taken aback by the words that she uses. And I think she's quite, I actually think when I've listened to her explain her experiences, there's always this undertone of pain that's associated with that. And I think that also that whole metamorphosis process from being somebody who grew up in a small town, being in a rural village and then going into the big city, experiencing betrayal, I do think that Pluto has a role to play in shaking the foundations of the things that you are, I want to say, familiar with. So although her comfort stayed, like she felt at home, at peace with the family, being in the local rural village, she was always going to have to go to a completely different city, which is Johannesburg. It's the urban industrial city where people go there to actualize their dreams in order to be really found on the global stage level that she was. And I think that's why when I think about devotion to God, I do think about Jupiter. I think about where's your faith sitting in your chart? So, and I think it ties in with what we were saying about the moon as well. So I think we both agree on the Pisces moon. I think Jupiter for me, I actually want to say it's giving me Jupiter in Sag, but I'm also getting Jupiter in water as well. I feel like I want to go with Jupiter in Sagittarius because whilst, okay, fine, there is a side that can be, the excess, but on the flip side, I think these people are the people who will talk about faith, will talk about God, will talk about going to the depths of the underworld to then how that experience transformed their relationship with faith, with God. But I also, again, don't want to shoot myself in the foot and not talk about the water sign. But I'm going to go with what my first instinct says. So I'm going to say Jupiter in Sag when I speak about her devotion to God. And again, but no, because she's not really open to traditional, like she kind of disregards the traditional religions and strictly focuses on her relationship with God, with Christ. And there's a scene in Zahara As I Rise in which she goes to the waters, right? And she says, this is where I get my healing from. Oh my God, this is making me think more about Jupiter in water sign. Okay, so she goes to the waters to get her healing, and then essentially says, I'm not doing this because I'm going to go perform rituals. I'm not a sangoma, I'm not a traditional healer, but I'm going there because I get my powers from there. I become healed and God heals me. And she was singing a Christian gospel song. So now this is making me conflicted because I'm like, but okay. I think Jupiter and Sag would be more open to traditional religions as opposed to not being so. And perhaps this is why I might have to go for either Jupiter in Pisces or Jupiter in Scorpio. But there's Cancer too. And her energy, like when we think about the upbringing, she is quite passionate. She is quite devoted to the family as well. She speaks about her only friends are her mum, her dad, and her brother. She quite clearly distinguishes that although she might have other friends, these are the people who have been there with her through thick and thin. I'm going to rule out Jupiter in Sag when it comes to devotion and devotion to God and devotion to the upbringing. And Cancer, I think I'm going to bet on Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer.
Okay.
I'm going to say that, yeah. But to the betrayal side of things, as it is alleged that, when she started out, as I mentioned, she came from the rural towns into this big city, with only her guitar and her passion, her drive, and the fuel within her. And, she fortunately was signed with a record label, became a very big hit wonder in Southern Africa and the world beyond. But, it is alleged that as time went on, she didn't realize that she signed unfair contract terms, and felt that she was owed money by these record labels, which wasn't being paid to her. And when I think about betrayal, I can't see betrayal without Pluto and Neptune in one's chart. When I think about the fact that this was on a global platform, because then this was televised, this was publicized. She actually came to the press and said, you know what, I'm going out, I'm vocalizing my story, and I'm going to share what's happened. And and not seeing things clearly or not seeing things for what they are. I want to say I'm still going to stand by Neptune and Sag. There's this optimism that perhaps, you know, when she started out, you know what, I got my big break. Me and my family are going to have security, stability, whatever the case might be. And I think that perhaps would have overshadowed okay, I need to question this. Like, I think Neptune in an earth sign, even though it rules our blind spots, I think Neptune in an earth sign might, at some stage, once they come out of the fog, the haze, they might ask those questions. But I think in that Jupiter ruled, like, optimistic sign.
So the devotion to God, like, as you said, like, it's so clear that for her, it's not about spirituality. It's purely about religion and how she relates to her faith through knowing God. But yet, whenever she speaks and her presence is so what I would call spiritual, that whole going to the waters and like her being healed by the waters, even her birth story started with her being born in her amniotic sac and she was in the waters. Like, that's an undeniable, unshakable connection to the water. But something that also strikes me is she kind of said that for her, it wasn't necessarily about fame. She just wanted to heal people. And I think for her, it was about healing people through her music, through her story. But I do kind of see her devotion coming with a sense of conservatism. And there was just something that felt a little bit restricted, one track minded, quite fixed, not being able to or not wanting to see it from any other perspective. I think for the devotion, I know you mentioned about, I think you referenced Jupiter here.
Yes.
I'm going to go with Venus here, actually, because this will kind of tie into her family, her devotion to family and her family values. It's that values bit. I think she values faith to another level, another deeper degree. And when we think about Venus, of course, it's about how we relate, it's about love, but the underlying factor is about what we value in love, in faith. And I think there was like a deep, complex relationship I felt with, not complex, but a deep connection to God, and that her love was through God, that she felt that she could be on earth to serve and to give her gift out to the world. So I'm going to lean here on Venus, I think.
Okay.
Although I do agree with your Jupiter angle as well. I think, do you know, for me, it kind of gives that Cancer Capricorn axis, because Cancer Capricorn being sister signs. So for every sign there is an opposite. And I think the conservatism that I feel is Capricorn energy. However, I think the devotion to family gives that Cancer. So I think that devotion to God and that devotion, full stop, devotion to God, devotion to family, is Venus in Cancer. I actually think her Jupiter, again, following your chain of thinking with the alignment with religion or faith, I think that could be the Capricorn.
Okay.
Yeah. Or if it's not, I think her Jupiter is retrograde, meaning it's more of an internal process for her. It's not an outwardly expressed energy. I think the other thing why I would say Cancer here is something that was really like profound to me when I was watching one of her interviews, was that she had this, I don't know if it was like a book or a diary where she would handwrite her songs, and she'd kept them from quite young. And there was something that I felt that was quite nostalgic within that process that felt really connected to her and to her heart. And for me, whenever I think about nostalgia, I do think of Cancer. I'm either going to say Jupiter is in an unknown sign, but it's retrograde, or it's in Capricorn.
Yes. Okay, cool.
She holds, like you say, her family are her friends. They are very, very close to her heart. And I do think that is Cancer energy there. Betrayal of the alleged kind of things that have happened within her transition from being like an ordinary person, let's say, to someone who is famous, and her dealings with like record labels, money, etc., etc. I think you're right in terms of there's like a deep sense of pain that she speaks on or comes across with, that it's like, it feels like a deep lesson for her, a deep life lesson that she's had to really come to grips with, which I don't think we mentioned. We're both aware that she is a Scorpio sun, which is...
Oh, we didn't even mention that.
which is linked, which Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, which is, you know, the planet that does come through transformation, that birth, death, rebirth cycle.
Yes.
So it could be that, but I also do think there is another Plutonic aspect. So I wouldn't be surprised if she has Chiron with her sun. So Chiron being the wounded healer, which is a wound that everyone has within their birth chart, or it speaks to a wound that everyone has in their birth chart, that is something that we're here to embody as a life lesson, something that we're here to move through and work through, so that we can then share that with the world, share that in terms of like our story, our healing, or just being able to share it with one other person. And I do think that the impact that she has made since she has passed, for me, I feel that the impact has been about the pain that she has endured, or she did endure during her lifetime.
Oh, wow.
Which is why I wouldn't be surprised if her Chiron sits quite close to her sun, hence, or is in Scorpio.
Okay. Betrayal of those who, you know, she considered, because I think often in her interviews, she says, like, I saw these people as brothers, people who who I trusted with not with my life per se, but she held them in high esteem. So when I think, I'm not gonna lie, I really believe the wounded healer, the archetype of that, and that is it's quite symbolic in when you hear her speak and how strong that comes through. And I will come on to what I think about that, but I will round up and say that I think Pluto, for me, in that sign, she was very loyal to them. And loyalty is giving me, well, the sense that I'm getting from loyalty, I think it's coming from cardinal energy, I want to say, but it could also be fixed. And I think despite that, there is this wanting to still give people the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. That, if that's the better word that I can use. And I want to say Libra, but then when I think about it, I think about fixed too. But she can't be Pluto and Taurus. That's too far apart. So I want to actually say, perhaps there is, because again, Libras don't come for me. Do not come for me, please. But I think there's this ability, because of the balance of the scales, like, and as you notice, one scale is higher and one scale is slightly lower. Like, I don't think scales are essentially, even if you think about a seesaw, it's never essentially equal. One's higher and then one's lower. And I think she was giving more than what she was receiving. But then there's still this ability to still want to reach equilibrium, still be civil, still be diplomatic. And I think that comes from Libra. So I think the betrayal from the people who she considered to be friends, brothers, family, not blood family, but family that she created in the city that she was living in, the urban city, I think that comes from that Pluto in Libra. That's what I'm going to assume. I love the point you mentioned about that wound. And I think I want to say Chiron in Gemini, you know? And I think the reason why I say that is because it's to do with the words. Like, there's something about her words, like the words she uses in her lyrics. As you mentioned, she writes her own lyrics. She's not outsourcing and she doesn't have a ghostwriter. This is her. So, but also, she stayed silent for quite a long time, as she's mentioned, but then she eventually used the media to share that pain. If you think about the source of her pain, a lot of it is to do with the fact that, like, although she is this world recognized artist, singer and guitarist, it's like because of the very words that she signed on that piece of paper, she is in the position that she's in today. And that's why I think, like, no, Chiron and Gemini, it's the very words that she signed that's actually coming back to hurt her. But then in that pain, in that wound, she's also helping to teach others how to read the T's and C's, how to learn about business contracts, and also how to actually advocate and stand up for yourself with your voice, which Gemini is Mercury ruled. And she did come to the media to do this.
I think it would be kind of like remiss of us to not even like mention her talents. Like, she was an absolutely gifted writer, singer, musician, and the way that she conducted herself within like media outside of when she was like being very serious was she was so hilarious. Like, she had such a funny way that she was so witty, so quick in her responses, and just like remarkable. I think she had a remarkable presence about her. And like, I think she had, I can't remember if it was like a specific event, but her being able to sing for Mandela as a personal invitation. Like, she was very well known. And this is someone who had a lot of accolades, you know, irrespective of what was going on, you know, behind the scenes with her team. So I think it's like worth just kind of spotlighting the positive aspects about her just for a moment, because she was very well accomplished. And I think that energy, I know we've already spoken about her moon being in Pisces, but I definitely do feel that kind of that Pisces energy can be linked to that, but also Leo, Gemini energy kind of comes through quite strongly, especially Gemini. Maybe this is more her Mercury that I'm feeling in terms of her communication, her expression. So witty, so quick, and just like, I think that being able to write her own songs, again, thinking of Mercury being, Mercury being the planet of communication and comms and technology. I just think that it feels at home for her.
Yes.
And she feels at home within her voice. So I think that Mercury and Gemini could be at play here. But I also, in terms of like bodily ruler, I think the vocal cords and throat is Taurus or Leo.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I think, which again, I don't necessarily feel Taurian energy with her. However, we can't deny her vocal ability and her way that she commands the stage.
I think that does.
Yeah. So it's I'm torn between Mercury in Gemini or Mercury in Taurus.
I did say I stand with Mercury in Scorpio. So perhaps I would place her Venus in its natural exalted ruler. I don't want to say Libra because it's not giving Libra. It's giving more Taurus. So I think I would put Venus into, because she also speaks about the comfort, like she likes making teas that she made at home with her mum.
She likes being at home in general.
And I do think Taurus people, or Taurus energy per se, loves the comfort of the home. But I think about the food that she like there's nostalgia around the food. And although I'm saying the voice, I did say Mercury in Scorpio, so I'm going to stand with that. But I would perhaps put her Venus in Taurus.
Understand that. The Venus in Taurus. I think there was something, because looking back at my notes, there was something that I mentioned about her being a late bloomer within her relationships. And I
Hmm.
thought that that could have been Taurus energy, taking their time,
Okay.
needing to
Hmm.
grow into or to mature, to find the right conditions and the right person before getting into an intimate relationship. So I can see it from
Yes.
that perspective. But I think I said for me, I felt her Venus was in Cancer. So yeah, I'll stick to that. And then the other thing I guess with her is that even though she had interviews and that she was a public persona, she was a public
Hmm.
figure, sorry, with a public persona that was very much kept as a public persona, and her private life was her private life. She was very
Yes.
boundaried with drawing that line between, I'm not going to speak about that, I'm going to keep this to myself. She values privacy. I think that's
Hmm.
quite
Hmm.
important too, which could be that
Hmm.
Scorpio sun again, kind of having the desire to keep things not a mystery, but private.
Okay.
But also,
Hmm.
I don't know, I'm hearing the Shroud of Illusion here when I'm thinking of privacy, which
Hmm.
again is that Neptune energy. And I know
The Shroud of
yeah,
Illusion.
I don't think I spoke about
Hmm.
Neptune. You did, but
No.
this is where I don't know where you said Neptune was for you, but I feel like her Neptune might be in Scorpio because of
Okay.
that valuing of privacy. But then there's something that's quite clouded, I feel, with that because I don't know how much of her private life was actually private.
We have pulled up Zahara's chart. As we know, she was born on the 9th of November in 1987 in East London, South Africa. Now, because there's no exact birth time, it's kind of hard to make a birth time up. So we would always recommend pulling up a midday chart, which is 12 p.m. The North Node looks like it's literally in Pisces on the 29th degree.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, that was the
So
first thing that popped out to me as well.
I think that does explain the devotion to God, to be honest. And you know how you said there is this like reluctancy to be open to alternative religions or beliefs. I do think though, okay, don't come for me, Virgos, but I think that at times,
Yeah.
if a Virgo is fixed in their way, although naturally their rulership is mutable, I think because they are so focused on the details, like the detail of the fact that God is God, and then, like, to her, the other things just, they don't resonate. I think she didn't provide room or create room to allow those thoughts, ideas, or perspectives to even trickle in. And I think that South Node, perhaps in Virgo, was quite stubborn to some extent. Or yeah, let me say the word fixed. I don't know what you think of that.
I think for what's striking to me is that when I'm seeing the Pisces North Node and the
Hmm.
South Node in Virgo, that the way that she conducted herself of no, I'm here to heal and I'm here to heal through my music. That is that Pisces Virgo axis of being the healer or being of service,
Hmm.
whether it's in
Okay.
spiritual service or human service. I see that North Node in Pisces Virgo as that energy. It explains why she was perhaps fixed for sure, but it also explains how sure she was about her gift and that her gift was
Hmm.
there for healing.
To the moon, Mimi. Like, I'm so surprised at that Cancer moon. You know?
Yeah. So yeah. Well, we both thought it was water,
Yes.
which Cancer is a water sign. So it does make sense, but yeah, it is a little bit of a surprise. I thought Cancer was more of her Venus, but then how I kind of related it was about her values, which again, Moon can be about what you
Hmm.
find important in the world. So it's not that surprising to me, the Cancer
No,
Moon.
I mean, to be honest, I understand, but I understand. And also, I'm like, it's actually in its traditional rulership as well. which perhaps could explain why there is so much emotion or motive around like these domains around the family, interpersonal connections, and like even when we think about romance, like, you know, you mentioned something that although she has a lot of privacy regarding romance, she doesn't necessarily shy away from the discussion. So the next thing that pops out to me that I can see quite clearly is Chiron. Chiron in Gemini.
Which is what you thought, wasn't it?
Yeah. There was something about the expression of work.
I thought her Chiron was conjunct or sitting next to her sun, but she's actually got sun next to Pluto in Scorpio. Which again kind of makes sense. It makes sense in terms of like how her life has basically been birth, death, rebirth, even post her physical death, the rebirth of her talents, her story is like, you know, people are talking about it, but also how much she had to endure through her life. I think we both picked up quite early that Jupiter energy, and Jupiter being somewhere in her chart. And what's interesting is that she has 3 planets in Sagittarius, meaning that she's a Sagittarius stellium, meaning that she has a concentration of that energy, which is why I think maybe we felt that Jupiter quite strongly, or I felt it strongly, I think.
Yeah. No, I did feel it strongly too. And if you think about it, that is Venus, that's Saturn, that is Uranus, right?
Yeah.
And I actually thought Neptune was in Sag, but it's actually in Cap. We say Uranus because we spoke about that undercurrent of betrayal, like coming at you quite fast, but not expecting it from the people, the people who you're optimistic about, people who you sang praises about. And I think that, you know, that being in Uranus as well, I do think it speaks to the fact that your faith will also undergo currents of change. But I'm really surprised I'm not going to lie, when I look at this chart, the thing that really stands out to me is the fact that there's no birth time, but as we can see, the Jupiter in Aries is essentially in that first house. I do think that she would be an Aries rising, and I think you were quite firm on that, to be honest, so I'm going to say you, because it's not we. I actually said Sag rising in the end. But no, also if you look at how, I know we're not looking at aspects here, but her Mars is in Libra. Like, she probably has tried to be diplomatic with people. She had probably tried to, you know, be the one who balances the scales, but it's not getting her far. So she's having to resource to, and as you mentioned, her Jupiter is retrograde here, which you did feel that, you know, you had that feeling, that inclination that it would be retrograde.
Just can't help but feel that there was a lot of tension within her life, a lot of tension, a lot of friction, and a lot of things that just this word of I had to endure. That's kind of the sense that I get when I look at the overall chart.
Crete in Libra can, I mean, yeah, but that is very, because I was quite convicted with the Venus in Taurus, but no Taurus planets whatsoever. But I also think it speaks to the perception of how she appeared in the public in relation to addiction struggles or personal struggles relating to addiction. But I think it's because if you look at it, that opposition between that Neptune and Moon is quite tight. And I think, alcohol did pacify some of these oppositions for her. These are quite great, like, remits and like areas that we have covered. And I think the chart definitely took me by surprise.
Me too. Yeah. Like, definitely unexpected. But I do think as well that even like throughout our conversations, there were like threads and themes that we can kind of see that relate to the chart, which I think is something. And hopefully it's been like fun, but also educational for those that are listening. So as always, we thought we would close with a hot seat question. And this time we thought we'd do it in honor of Zahara's birth chart. But Zahara's a Scorpio sun,
Yes.
we often associate Scorpio with the word transformation. And
Mm-hmm.
something that I felt was quite beautiful about her energy was that she seemed to transform herself, but transform others through her musical talent and her gift.
Yes.
So my question to you, Emily, is what would you say is an experience that transformed you in life or transforms, it could be present, and how do you honor this or how do you hold this?
Mimi, you're taking me to the depths of Pluto.
Yeah.
Pluto has been on one's ascendant for a hot minute. So if it's on my ascendant, you know it's sitting on my descendant, right? As we spoke about in episode 2, just tying it into what we're discussing today, the ascendant is the rising sign. It's the first part of our story. And the 7th house meets in the middle. You know, it's the other house. It's the partnerships, the connections, the contracts, the soul contracts too. And I think in 2022, Pluto brought me to the depths of my knees. And as I say to Mimi, like sometimes in life, I feel like I'm being dragged by my edges and by my collar. And that was one of those moments where a transformation happened so profoundly, but it was like and now I see also the fact that I have a Scorpio North Node as well, right?
Yeah.
And that was happening in the midst of my nodal return, and at that time, the crisis was real. But now that I'm out of it, 3 years later, I'm raising my hands up for those who can't see me. Yeah. I can say, honestly, I extend grace to myself. That's the first thing I do. I extend grace to myself for the things that I knew, the things that I didn't know, and the things that I was ashamed to share with the world. Right? You with me?
What was it? I know you mentioned the time frame, but what was the transformation? Like, what was it? Was there a specific catalyst?
There were, okay, so without going into too much detail, there was a specific catalyst. And I think for me, with that Scorpio South Node, my catalyst is people, humans, and close connections.
Okay.
And I think I will say, well, I can say it here. I'm not going to disclose their name, but it was a romantic connection in this instance. That was the catalyst. But there was the breakdown of that. And it was I'm going a bit into too much detail, but I will say it was also a taboo connection as well.
Okay.
Mimi, is yeah. So that catalyst of releasing the shame surrounding the taboo connection.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
Yeah, forgiving myself.
Yeah.
For not even, like, again, society is going to be society, but that does not discredit the things, emotions, feelings that I had and the experience that I do believe that our souls contract with other souls to go through certain lived experiences.
Can say that again.
And I think perhaps this is my sad dream being I'm not even a guru, but I can say that coming out of that transformation, that catalytic experience, it was out of body. I remember there were moments in which, like, Pluto and Scorpio would not allow me to escape that pain. Like, I had to actually sit with it.
Yeah.
And when it was released, and that's why I say how I honor that in my life, is that, do you know what? I try not to shame myself for things that I experience, I go through, I deal with. And I also have learned in the process as well to make peace with the fact that other people will have a judgment around certain things said or done.
Yes.
But it's shame. Shame was quite heavy for me. And I think that is, when you think about it though, it's quite Scorpionic. A lot of Scorpios are shamed for things. And that's what I'll summarize and say in honor of that life experience, that catalytic experience. shame is a big thing for me. Like, I can't even extend grace to myself if I'm still operating from a place of shame.
Oof.
So being able to... I'm sorry, I don't even mean to take it. But that's what I was like, Mimi, you're taking me out with this question because, Lord Jesus. But yes, I will sum it up there and leave it there.
That was a whole sermon. That was a whole ministry. It was a whole word. Like, I love that response. Honestly, I love that response because, like, the word shame, but the way that you frame that in that releasing the shame and understanding like the taboos that were surrounding that, and that actually it was your responsibility, your right to release that shame.
Yes.
That if that's not transformation, then I don't know what is. I think that is beautiful.
Yay.
And like for anyone that is listening, if you're kind of navigating a point of transformation, I think Emily's just given a word of wisdom there. If you're in a transformative period and you're struggling, look to where you might be holding or storing shame. So I do think, like, again, for me, when I'm thinking about the point of transformation, I have to look for where Pluto or Scorpio is in my chart, and we're the same generation. We're both Pluto and Scorp kids, and
yes, we are.
Mine sits within my 4th house of like home and family. So for me, like, every big point of transformation has always come through proximity to home, proximity to ancestry. And I can see in so many different ways. And there's like 2 main things that I'll speak on. And I've mentioned it before, but that primary relationship with my mother is the biggest time that I go through massive shifts in my life, whether it's on a psychological level, an emotional level, a physical level, that always brings about like a slight change in gears. But there's also the other side of it when I'm like sitting down with my dad and we're having conversations about where we come from and our history and how spirituality has always been a part of our like fabric. I feel myself transforming through those conversations. So I feel like those are both points of transformation for me. And in terms of how I honor it, I mean, I blab about it, I yap about it, I talk about it, and I don't stop. I think I create about it a lot as well.
Yes.
And it centers a lot of like conversations that I have. It centers a lot of the practices that I do. And that to me is kind of similar to yourself in that I don't believe I should carry shame or hurt or pain around these things. Like, these are things that I feel I'm here to liberate myself from. So I honor it by giving it breath, by giving it life daily.
You know, Plutonic energy and Scorpio energy rules your 4th house. And traditionally, again, that is seen as the house of the maternal, the mother, right? Maternal ancestry. And I think to go through profound Plutonic shifts and changes and still be able to speak breath into yourself and not carry over the experiences, the pain, and wear that badge of pain, to be honest, because it's very real and it can happen to any of us that we become and identify with the pain that we have experienced. And I think also on the flip side, though, there is the learning that you're doing with the paternal side. The times you're able to come together with your dad to go over your history, where you come from, and root yourself in those solid foundations. I did.
I love that. And I hope that like anyone who is listening, if like you're going through a moment of transformation, that you're able to view it in a different way and just kind of like hold it. That beautiful testimony. Thank you for listening. We have been 2 Mutables in a Pod. I think we need to start saying that if you've got to the end of this, please like, subscribe, share. Please let us know like who you'd want us to cover as well, because we want to keep doing the guessing game. We've got some beautiful people that we want to cover in future episodes. But for now, we have been 2 Mutables in a Pod, and we will say bye-bye for now.
Bye.